Welcome, everyone, to the very first deep dive. I'm really excited to be your host on this journey of knowledge and discovery.
We're going to be taking stacks of sources that you send us, and we're going to be distilling them down to the most fascinating, insightful, mind-blowing bits.
We're diving headfirst into a topic that's sure to leave you scratching your head, the dancing plague of 1518.
Yeah.
We get some interesting material from you, mostly from Wikipedia. And let me tell you, this is a story that's as strange as it is captivating. Hundreds of people in the middle of a city dancing for weeks on end. No music, no apparent reason, just an irresistible urge to move.
Strasbourg, in the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, the year 1518. Not exactly a time known for its rave culture. Life back then was hard famine, disease, superstition woven into the fabric of everyday life.
Right in the middle of all of this, a woman named Frau Trophäus steps out into the street and starts dancing. Not a graceful waltz, but like a wild, frenzied dance that went on for days. It's like something out of a fever dream.
Imagine witnessing that alone figure consumed by this inexplicable urge to dance. What would you think? What would you do?
I can't even imagine. And to make it even more bizarre, Frau Trophäus wasn't alone for long. Within days, a few people passing by started to join in. Then a few more. And then a few more until there were dozens of people dancing in the streets, seemingly unable to stop themselves.
This wasn't a coordinated performance, no choreography, no music to guide them. This was a collective frenzy, a contagious rhythm that seemed to grip the city. Within a month, hundreds of people were caught up in this strange and chaotic dance.
It sounds more like a nightmare than a plague. But was it actually deadly? I mean, dancing nonstop for days on end without food or water couldn't have been good for their health.
You're right to be concerned. Some historical accounts describe people collapsing from exhaustion, suffering heart attacks, or even dying from the sheer physical strain. There are claims of up to 15 deaths a day at the height of the plague. However, other accounts are completely silent on the matter of deaths. So the true human cost of this dancing plague remains a bit of a mystery.
So we have hundreds of people dancing, uncontrollably conflicting reports of deaths, and a time period steeped in superstition and fear. What did people back then think was causing this? Did they have any theories?
Oh, they certainly did. Some believed it was a curse from the gods. Others saw it as a sign of demonic possession. There was talk of hot blood, of imbalances in the humors, all sorts of explanations that, looking back, seem just as strange as the plague itself.
So if those explanations don't quite hold up under the microscope of modern science, what are some of the theories that researchers are considering today? What could possibly explain this bizarre phenomenon?
One theory that has been explored is ergotism, which is essentially poisoning caused by a fungus that grows on rye. What's fascinating about ergot is that it contains psychoactive compounds, some of which are related to LSD. Ergotism has even been suggested as a possible factor in the Salem witch trials.
Hold on, Salem witch trials. No, that's a rabbit hole I'd love to dive into someday.
Perhaps another time. But getting back to the dancing plague, while the ergot theory is intriguing, there are some significant problems with it. For one, it's unclear whether ergotism could really sustain such intense dancing for days, even weeks on end. And why would it affect this particular region so specifically at that time?
So if ergot poisoning isn't a completely satisfying answer, what are some other avenues that researchers have explored? What else could have been going on in Strasbourg that could explain this strange outbreak of dancing mania?
Well, another prominent theory focuses on the psychological and social climate of the time. Think about it. These people were living through incredibly difficult circumstances. Famine, disease, religious and social unrest were constant threats. It was a pressure cooker of stress and anxiety.
So you're saying that this intense, prolonged dancing could have been a manifestation of that collective stress? A sort of mass psychological release valve?
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this was a time when mental health wasn't understood the way it is today. Imagine facing such hardship and fear without the tools or language to process those emotions. The dancing could have been a way for people to cope, to express their anxieties and fears, even if they didn't consciously understand what was happening.
It's like their bodies were trying to communicate something that their minds couldn't grasp. It's both tragic and fascinating, and it makes me wonder if we're really all that different today. I mean, we might have a better understanding of psychology, but we're still susceptible to stress, to social pressures, to things that can trigger unusual and sometimes even dangerous behavior.
That's a really insightful observation. We might dress differently, we might have smartphones instead of pitchforks, but at our core, we're still human beings driven by the same basic needs, fears, and desires.
So if this theory holds water, the dancing plague wasn't really a plague in the traditional sense, but rather a mass psychological phenomenon, a kind of collective hysteria brought on by extreme circumstances. What's even more fascinating is that this wasn't the only instance of dancing mania throughout history.
You're absolutely right. There are accounts of similar events in other cultures and time periods, which suggests that this isn't just a quirky footnote in history, but rather a glimpse into a deeper aspect of human behavior, something that we're only beginning to understand.
It makes you wonder, could something like the dancing plague happen again? In our modern world, with all its complexities and pressures, are we really immune to these kinds of mass psychological events?
That's a chilling thought. But before we jump into that rabbit hole, let's take a step back and look at how the authorities in Strasbourg reacted to this unfolding crisis. Because their attempts to stop the dancing plague were, well, let's just say they were interesting.
Okay, let's hear it. What did they try? Did they call in the exorcist? Did they try to reason with the dancers? Did they just throw their hands up in the air and say, let them dance until they drop?
Well, initially they thought the best way to cure the dancing was get this more dancing. They actually encouraged it. They set up stages and guild halls and even hired musicians, thinking that they could help people dance themselves free of whatever was ailing them.
Wow, that's like fighting fire with fire, only with more flailing limbs and sweaty brows.
Yeah.
So did this dance it out strategy actually work?
Not quite. In fact, it seems to have backfired spectacularly. The dancing only intensified, becoming more frenzied and more chaotic. Imagine the scene, hundreds of people crammed into these halls, driven by this relentless urge to dance their bodies, pushed to the limits of exhaustion.
Sounds more like a scene from a dystopian novel than a historical event. Makes you wonder if they considered the potential risks of encouraging such extreme physical exertion, especially in people who are likely already malnourished and weakened.
You're right to point that out. It seems that their understanding of both medicine and psychology was quite different back then. Their attempts to control the situation often seem more like desperate measures than carefully considered solutions.
So if encouraging the dancing didn't work, what did they try next? Did they finally realize that maybe dancing wasn't the best solution to a dancing plague?
Well, they eventually shifted gears and tried a different approach. They banned music, outlawed public dancing, and even tried sending people on pilgrimages to shrines dedicated to Saint Vitus, the patron saint of, among other things, dancers.
Oh, the irony. It seems they were grasping at straws, trying anything they could to regain control of this situation and restore order to their city.
The authorities were clearly struggling to make sense of this event. It challenged their understanding of the world of human behavior and of their own authority. Imagine the pressure they must have been under to find a solution to explain the inexplicable.
It's like they were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. They had these existing frameworks for understanding illness and social order, and this dancing plague just didn't fit. And what's even more baffling is that the dancing plague eventually subsided in September 1518, but we still don't know for sure what ended it. Was it the pilgrimages, the ban on dancing? Did it simply run its course? It's a puzzle with a lot of pieces, but no clear picture.
And that's the beauty and frustration of historical mysteries. We can piece together the fragments of evidence, we can examine the theories and interpretations, but sometimes those definitive answers remain elusive.
But even without those neat and tidy answers, we can still learn so much from exploring these events. We can gain a deeper understanding of the human condition, of the complexities of our history, and maybe even a bit of insight into our own behavior and motivations.
Absolutely. The dancing plague serves as a powerful reminder that human behavior can be incredibly complex and often defies simple explanation. It challenges us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to appreciate the nuances of history.
And it also underscores the importance of context. Trying to understand the dancing plague through a modern lens can be misleading. We have to step back and try to see the world through the eyes of those who lived through it, to understand their beliefs, their fears, and the social and cultural forces that shaped their lives.
And that's what makes the study of history so compelling. It's not just about memorizing dates and battles, it's about understanding the human story in all its messy, complicated glory.
So as we try to wrap our heads around this bizarre and fascinating event, what are some key takeaways that you hope our listeners will walk away with? What makes the dancing plague relevant to us today, centuries after the last dancer collapsed in exhaustion?
Well, I think it highlights the profound power of the mind-body connection. Whether it was mass hysteria, stress-induced psychosis, or some other unknown factor, the dancing plague demonstrates how our mental and emotional states can have a powerful impact on our physical well-being.
It's a reminder that our minds and bodies are not separate entities, but rather intertwined aspects of a complex and interconnected system. And this connection is something we're still exploring and trying to understand today.
Exactly. Think about the placebo effect, the power of suggestion, the role of stress in chronic illness. We're only beginning to scratch the surface of how our thoughts, beliefs, and emotions can influence our physical health.
And it's not just about individual health. The dancing plague also raises questions about social contagion, about how behaviors and beliefs can spread through a community, particularly in times of stress and uncertainty.
It's a reminder that we are social creatures deeply influenced by the people and environments around us. Our behaviors, beliefs, and even our emotions can be contagious, spreading through social networks in ways that we may not even be aware of.
And this has huge implications for how we understand and respond to everything from political movements to public health crises to viral trends on social media.
It's a reminder that we're not just individuals, but part of a larger social fabric constantly interacting and influencing each other. And understanding those dynamics can be crucial for navigating the complexities of our modern world.
So the dancing plague, this strange and seemingly distant event, offers us a lens through which we can examine some of the most fundamental aspects of the human experience. It's a story about the power of the mind, the complexities of social interaction, and the enduring mystery of human behavior.
It's a story that challenges us to think differently, to question our assumptions, and to embrace the unknown. And in a world that often feels increasingly chaotic and unpredictable, those qualities are more valuable than ever.
I couldn't agree more. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the dancing plague of 1518. What a journey it's been.
It's been a pleasure exploring this strange and wonderful mystery with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this very first deep dive. We hope we've piqued your curiosity about the dancing plague and maybe even given you a few things to think about when it comes to the complexity of human behavior and the enduring power of the mind.
And remember, even though the dancing plague happened over 500 years ago, it still holds valuable lessons for us today. It reminds us to be mindful of the stressors in our own lives, to be aware of how our thoughts and beliefs can influence our actions and even our physical health.
Yeah, it also encourages us to be critical thinkers, to question the information we encounter and avoid blindly following the crowd. Especially in today's world, right, where we're constantly bombarded with news, opinions, and trends, it's more important than ever to be discerning and to form our own informed conclusions.
So the next time you see a strange news story or a viral trend popping up on your social media feeds, take a moment to pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what are the underlying factors at play here? What are the potential consequences, both positive and negative? And most importantly, how can I use this information to make informed decisions and live a more meaningful life?
Those are some great questions to keep in mind. Speaking of questions, we'd love to hear from you, our listener. What are your thoughts on the dancing plague? What theories resonate with you the most? And what other mysteries, historical or otherwise, would you like us to dive into in future episodes?
You can find us on all the usual podcasting platforms and on social media. We're always excited to hear from our listeners and to explore new avenues of knowledge and discovery together.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our very first deep dive. We hope you enjoyed the journey and that you'll join us again next time for another fascinating exploration into the world around us.
Until then, stay curious, keep exploring, and don't forget to take care of your mind and body. Who knows? Maybe a little dancing is just what the doctor ordered.
Just maybe not for weeks on end.
Agreed. Moderation in all things.
See you next time.